KPIs play a key part of business decisions, and now with the new card visual in Power BI, you can add reference labels that are able to tell you different parts of that KPI and how it's performing or underperforming via whatever you set as a target, or what I'm going to be showing as well, in groups. And then also add the addition of conditional formatting to be able to show the performance, and even if it's actually hit performance as a total, if it's actually underperforming in one of the segments, in this case, new and repeat customers. So let's jump over to my Power BI desktop and I'll show you how I did them. So the data set I'm going to be using, I've uploaded onto data.world, which I'll put a link in the description below. So as you can see, I've got two KPI cards here that are showing you the target of what is sales and the targets that are orders. And we've got this set to 2017, which is the last year of the data set. It runs from 2014 all the way to 2017. So if I went to 2018, you'll see it show last year, but there's nothing there for that year. And if I go to 2014, you'll see this is purely the same number here because there is no 2013 data. And as you would notice, as I was clicking through those, these changed color. And that's all done with conditional formatting, which is just a simple measure, which I'll show you how I did that. But also you might be thinking, if this is above target, why is it orange? And this is where I've included an extra little tweak to how the KPI operates, because there are cases where even though a company is performing well in its actual target, there might be underlying issues of where it isn't actually performing well. And this is where you can add in different sections. So here, because it's customer data, I've got new customers and repeat customers. So new customers will be any customers that have bought in 2017 compared to new customers in 2016. In this case, it's saying it's 80% below. So there was 80% less of new customers in the variance compared to last year. So it basically means you have less new customers coming into the business. And if your repeat customers are going up, you need new customers to become repeat customers, because you're not necessarily going to always have people repeating. So this is basically saying if you had a normal KPI, you would just have, this is target, this is green, great. But actually, because new is down, a future issue is that means you have less people to repeat. And just because this is good now, it doesn't mean in a year, 6 months, or whenever, this might actually be a problem. So it's a good way of being able to sort of predict what might happen in the future and highlight an issue so it can be fixed now, instead of waiting for it going, oh no, now we're down 6 months, a year down the line because the KPIs went to red. So now you know why it does what it does. Now I'm going to show you how I did it. And all you need to do is make sure you've got the latest version. Actually, I think the card version with reference labels might have been November, but they did do a few little tweaks and updates in February. So make sure you've got the February update, which you can find out by going to File and then clicking on About. And then here it will tell you what the version is. And in this case, it's the February 2024 version, but the later versions will work as well, just in case March has come out now. So once you've got the data loaded in, by simply going to get data and then going to Excel workbook and pointing to the file and then loading that in, you'll get this table, which looks like this, which is basically an aggregated version of the sales table where you're looking at just the whole order per customer, and then it's giving you the new and repeat depending on the sequence. So if it's a first sequence, it's new, anything after that counts as a repeat. So what you need to do is pop over to the visualizations and then you go to new card visual and just click on that. And then what we'll do, we'll just adjust this so it matches here, but you can play around with it as much as you want. I'm just going to do it so it matches. And because I've already got sales and orders, I'm going to be using ATV, which is average transaction value, which is basically sales divided by orders. So then that gives you the amount. And ATV is very simple. It's just the average of the customer order sales, because in this particular data set, each line is an order. So you only need to do an average of whatever the actual sales is. In other cases, you'll want to do sales divided by orders to be able to get that number. But this is what works with this particular data set. So all you do is find your main measure and then you drop that into data. And there you go. You suddenly have the actual name, which is what's here. And if you want to change it, you can just go in here and change it like so. And then you've got your ATV. You can go up to your formatting here. And then in the call out values, you can go down to label after you selected here under apply to settings ATV. It will then change, and then you can actually change your title there. And you can also add in a dynamic title if you wanted to. But in this case, I just changed it on the actual measure title here. But if you wanted to, you can go into there, down to label, and then change it there. Also, while you're in under label, you can put it below if you wanted to, but I prefer it to be at the top. So I've got above. And then if we come to these actual callout values, this is where you can set the sizing of everything we've got here. And as I mentioned, what you want to do, if you make any changes to this, because we're only using one measure, you can use multiple, and that's why there's this here. Always try and use whatever you're applying to, the actual measure that you've got. So generally always defaults to all. So you want to change it to ATV or whatever measure name you have. And then under here, you have the values, which is this one here, and you can change that to whatever size you want. So let's make this 28 so it matches the others. And then I want it to be center aligned. Display units keep as is, because you can see here it automatically changes. So these are just numbers because they're less than 1,000. When it goes over 1,000, it then adds in the K. Obviously you can change them to millions if you wanted to, so we could change that to millions, but it doesn't work very well when it comes to the variance because that'd be a very, very low number. So it's better to keep it to auto to make it pick which one it thinks is best. But if you do have any issues, this is where you can change it. And then you can also add in decimal places if you wanted to. I choose not to because I want to keep it in as keep it in as small as possible. And now we've done the value, let's move over to the label. And then you'll notice there's a big gap here, and this is where the space is between label and a bit there. So I'm going to just change that to 0, and you can see it's now squished it in a bit more. And we want to make it a bit smaller, so let's make it 16. You can add text wrap if it's a bit long. I've used this a few times, it's not quite worked. I haven't quite figured out why yet, but once I do, I'll do an updated video anyway. I know they're going to be doing more work on the actual card visuals, so there's going to probably be more things that I'm going to be doing in the future. So I'll discuss that, and it might actually just be a bug that they've got because the text wrap tried out many different things and it doesn't seem to actually overlap. So turn that off. Okay, so now we've sorted out the call out values. We'll come back to the layout in a minute because that will give you this different spacing between here and here. Let's go down to cards, and then here is where you can do the rounding. So if we go to rounded rectangle and then rounded corners, let's just make it 15. And then that gives you there. So you can just keep adjusting this to be able to give you what you actually want as your rounded. Don't even have to be rounded. I just like to have the rounded corners. Just makes it look just a little bit more slick. And then for padding, we just leave as normal, but you can play around with it depending on how you want your KPI card to look. Because I don't want anything to show on the background, I just turn the background off. Border I leave, and then make that a width of 4, and then we can come back to doing the colors later. And then for this little bar at the top here, this is called an accent bar, so you click that on and then we open this up, and then you can change where it's positioned. So at the moment it's to the left, as you can see here. So let's make it 15, and then you can see how it looks. And then I'm just going to put it at the top. So as you can see, you can bullet at the bottom if you wanted to, and you can bullet to the right as well. But I think it looks quite nice just being on the top. And then if we move to the next part, which will be the reference labels here, and here is what these are. So this is where the reference labels sit. So the reference labels, we want to be able to create these measures where we can do versus target and new and repeat variants. So basically for my target, I'm using last year's numbers. So whatever you select, it's always going to be the same period last year. And this is the reason why I've used same period last year here. So all I've done is take the ATV measure that we've got here, just put this in this measure called ATV customer order, because that's the data set, because I have other tables that have ATV, and then previous year stroke target. You can call it whatever you want. So if you were using a target, you put your target amount in here. But in this case, I'm using last year's data to be able to be my target. And all I've done is go calculate, put in the ATV measure we're using, and then same period last year. I've used the dim date table here. You can just use the order date if you wish. If you want to be able to get the dim date, you can download that as well. All you need to do is just go transform data, take the notepad that is saved in the description below for the dim date table, and then you just do create a new source, blank query. And then once you're in the blank query, just click on it, and then you can go to advanced editor. And this is the dim date table here, all the information. All you do is clear out all the data that was in there, paste in the dim date table from that notepad, and then click done. And then you've got your dim date table. And then all you need to do is just do close and apply. And then just in your modeling view, all you want to do is just connect your date to your order date to date. And then that will give you the relationship to be able to do that. If you don't have to do that, you can just use the order date. Then yeah, same period as last year is basically DAX formula that allows you to be able to go whatever you select So in this case, 2017, all that period, what is it last year? And if you select a month, it'll be what is it this month? So December 2017, it will then give you the data for 2016 in December. And then you just save that. And then all I've done is just added in the comma separator and whole number because I didn't want to have any decimal places in it. And then for the target, all I've done is basically go, what is the performance of the ATV for this year or whatever you've selected as your actual year? So that's your actual measure you're using minus that measure where we're looking at the target for the previous year. And then all that does is just give you the difference between how much it compared to the previous year. So now we have our target. We can just drop that into add labels. And as you'll see, it's popped up down here, and as a starting point you do have select label all. What we'll do first is just do some formatting, and then we can select our first actual measure for our reference label. So if we do select series all, you can see it now removes that there, but that's okay because you can't select any data here for the moment. We just do select data all, and you see down here we have position call below call out, which is putting it there, but we want it to the right. So now we have it to the right. Background is grey. We don't want a background, so we can just take that off. The divider is this thing in the middle here. And what we want to do is make that 4 as width. So now we get in this look. And then spacing, you want to click on customize, and then we just want to make this 15 on both. Just gives you a bit more space between it to give that little bit of extra breathing room. And then if we come to the layout, we then want to be vertical alignment centered. So now that sits there, and we leave it left justified. So that way we can still read it from left to right instead of it being centered, because if we do it centered, it will look like that, but that won't look too great once we start adding in extra ones. But you can play around with it how you would like it to look. So now we have our reference label put in. We can go back to our callout values, and then if we scroll down under layout, we now have callout size, and this is this bit here. So if we move it this way, you can see it pushes it out that way. If you want it to come to the left like I do, we can bring this down to 40, and then it sits there and just gives that extra bit of room. That's only possible once you've added the reference label. That's why I've come back to it now. But now it's in, you know how you can just adjust it. So you know if you want it to be more to the right, leave more space for the callout value, then that's where you can push more percentage higher. If you want to make more room for the reference labels, then that's where you bring it down. And in this case, I've done it to 40%. So now we have the main base all set up. We can now focus on just these reference labels, getting those formatted, and then we can turn our attention to the conditional formatting. So if you come back to reference labels, all we need to do is now go select series ATV, and then we get our reference label back here. And as we can see, this is a very, very long title, and you don't get the luxury of being able to just sort of click on this and change the title name there. This is where you can go to title. So if we come down to title, we want to be able to now select this particular measure. So if we go select label, ATV, customer order, target diff, we now include that. And now this is suddenly ungrayed. And what this is doing is showing you can use the field name, which is what's there, or you can do custom. And if we do custom and then remove what it already called, and then if we just call this versus target, we now have versus target, and we can see it's minus $29. So interestingly, versus target, sales are up, orders are up. The average transaction value of those 2,000 orders is actually down. And you can kind of tell that by looking at the target here, because if you notice here, versus target is up 28%, but it's only up in sales as 20%. You wouldn't be able to spot that automatically without understanding, oh, that's higher than that and that's higher than that. And that's why it's good to have a joining one that can be able to show you it. And this is why it's important to have certain KPIs that are able to kind of explain this point to this point to that point. That way, you know, if something is down here, that's going to have a repercussion over here, not being hidden in the fact that, oh, sales are up, but actually people are spending less. So now we have the target there. We just want to bring the font size down to 9 because that is quite large. Now you've got the value, which is own separate entity here. And again, we want that to match. So let's bring this down to 9. Again, here you can play with your units and everything. And then with these little things on the side here, these are what sit under the section called detail. So if we turn that on, we open that up, and then in here you see, like with the reference labels, you have a thing where you can add data. And then in here, we want to be able to drop in what would be our format version. So if we drop this in, you can now see we have this here. And how this is done, and let me just bring this one down for now so we can see it side by side with the actual measure. If I click back on it again, you can see we've got variables. And what the variables are doing is using a unichar variable to actually capture if it's an up or down arrow. So we're just storing that and calling it up underscore arrow or down underscore arrow, depending on which one it is. You can find all different ones around, but these ones create these particular arrows. And then just to make it a lot easier to be able to see what I'm creating here, instead of having to keep putting the measure in, I've added target and target diff amount, which is again using the target is last year's measure, the one which I showed before, and then the diff, which is the difference between whatever selected is your current measure minus this amount here. These are just being loaded in as variables because it just makes it easier to manage when you're doing additional variables. And then I'm converting what would be the target amount difference into a percentage. And all I'm doing here is now creating another variable. I'm just calling this target percentage, and within here, so let's just forget the formatting bit for a second. Under the divide, this is what's giving you your 0.06, or it would show if it wasn't formatted into a percentage, is I'm just dividing this, which is the difference, by last year's. So you can see the percentage difference compared to last year, and then just rounding off with 0 if nothing is there. And then all I've done is just run that through a format, which then starts here. And then all you have to do is put between your divide 2 brackets, because that's the end of your divide, and this is the start format, and a comma, and then you can put in quotation marks how you want it to be formatted. So I've done a percentage here. If you wanted it to be like 0.6, you can add an extra 0 in. So I'll show you if I do that now. You now get the extra 0, but if it goes above 6 or goes into double figures, then that's where it would show more. But I prefer it just to be as it is without the extra 0 at the front. And then you just do percent. And obviously you can play around with different formats which you want to do, but in this case I'm doing percentages for this one. Now we have these all set out. I've then created within an if under return, if this difference is less than 0, so if it's a minus amount, which we know it is, it's minus 29, then we want to join the result of this and then a space. So that's basically it's creating this and then a space, and then give it a down arrow because we know it's less than 0. That's where you want to put the down arrow. So if it's not less than 0, then we're going to put it as target percent and with the quotation marks in the space. That's all that's doing, it's just creating space, then up arrow. So even if it's actually 0, it's going to be counted as up, but this is just to keep it nice, clean formatting. You could add in an arrow that's that like that, or you could put a hyphen or whatever you want to do it. I just prefer to have it that actually if it's actually hit target, then that's a good thing. So we can go up, but it would still get called out as orange within the actual conditional formatting. So now you know how that's created. That's all you need to do to drop in for that detail there. And then we can just adjust the size. And because this is a supporting metric, in essence, just a little reference over here, I'm just going to make that 8 because that's 1 less than what we've done for the others, which is 9. It just makes it just sit a lot better. And then once we start adding the conditional formatting, it just makes it just look a lot less in your face when you look at it. And then one last change is just go to value, and I forgot, but I like to make that bold. And then it just stands out because it's the amount there. And there you go. That is your formatting for it. And we'll do the same for new and repeat. But you may be wondering, how did you do these little lines here where it's a little split? Oh, this is where I used a blank KPI. And what a blank KPI is just literally blank KPI. It's just a measure that has just got blank in it. So there's nothing. It's basically just a dummy measure that is being used by dropping it in, and it just looks like this. And the great thing is, once you drop that blank KPI in, so it's just blank, you could have it as quotation marks, however you want to make it blank. It could be anything. The good thing is, if you go select label and then go to the actual one here, we can now just remove the value, and look, it just disappears. And as you remember, we can go to our title and we can do custom, and then in here all I've done is just add a bunch of hyphens in place of it, and then it looks like that. And then because it's quite a lot, and reduce it to just 10. You can reduce it to even less if you wanted to, but generally with the repeat variants that pushes out a bit more, so I like it to sort of line up as much as possible with whatever the largest reference label is. And then you can add in the coloring if you wanted to, but what I like to do is just make it just a light gray just to make it sit out. And that is basically it to do that. And now the last parts to do is now to add in these parts here, which are new and repeat. So I'm just going to drop those both in, and then I can just explain what I've done with these. In the table, there's a new and repeat customers column, which I showed earlier. It basically says if it's a repeat customer or a new customer. And all I've done is just use that target diff measure that we've got here. So you can see target diff ATV, just put that within a calculate, and then I've just filtered to either if it's new customer or repeat customer. And the only reason why I need these is because once those are done, then we need to apply those particular ones for the formatting here. Now I could have done, which is what I've done here, if I wanted my target to be different. I just didn't want to keep creating loads and loads of different measures, but because I need the target diff still, because that needs to be what is your actual measure that you drop as your reference label, I then, instead of me creating extra measures just for what would be the target, I then just did the target within here. So it's exactly the same layout as we did with the original one. So if I go back to the formatting here, you can see we've got, first one is your up arrow, your down arrow, your target difference, and your target percent. For the new and repeat, the only difference is in the target, I've taken the same measure, which was used for last year, and I've just run it through a calculate and then just filtered it by new customer. And then I've done the same for repeat customer. And then instead of target diff amount being this one for the all, where it just says target diff, I'm now using the ones we've created here, which has got the filter based on if it's new customer or repeat customer. And then I've just replaced it under here. So once you create that one particular measure, you can then just easily just copy over these two sections to then give you a result, because everything else is already being done by the variable. So you don't have to change anything, just update the target and the target amount, and everything else does it. No, gotta work smarter, not harder. So as before, we just need to format everything. So all we need to do is then go to select label, let's do new customer first, and then we want to change the field name to custom, and then we just want to remove all that and then call it new var, and then we want to make that 9. And if we go down to value, we want to make that 9 and make it bold. We then want to go to detail and turn on, and then we want to find our target diff format, which is this one. Titles get really long because I've added in the customer order one, and then we drop that in and we can see it, and then we just make that 8. And now that one's done, we can come up and do select label again. Then we do the exact same thing for the repeat. We do select label repeat, custom under title, change that to repeat var, and then change that to 9, 9, and then value, we change that to 9, make bold, and then detail, we turn on, make that 8, and then we drop in our formatting one for repeats, this one here, and then we can see where the difference is. So it looks like new are spending less, but so are repeat, but more under the new, but there's less new anyway. So now we have our reference labels in, we got our formatting done. The last part is the conditional formatting. So we can get that dynamic change and telling us if it's positive or negative. So the first thing we want to do is update what is the cards here. So how you do that, if we go to our callout values first, which will be this bit here, and then select ATV, because that's our main measure. I'm going to go to values, and then we want to go to FX, and then we want to do rules. And then under rules, I'm going to find the measure that I've created called card condition. And what card condition does is it shows you if it's red, amber, green. So basically it's just a switch function that is telling you if it does one particular thing, it goes R. If it does another one, it goes green, which is G, and then anything else would be A, which is amber. And that's what we do, is create a rule like that. Don't worry, I'm going to be doing this multiple times so you'll be able to see exactly what it is, but I just want to show you what happens when you do it. You can see this has changed, it's red, which is correct because it's down. So how this measure is created is simply going in and then using the target diff of new customer and repeat customer. Now you don't have to do it like this. You can just do a simple one where you go switch if true and you just wanted to do the total. You can just use your target diff, normal one. Don't need to use new and repeat or whatever groups you're doing. So if you wanted to just do it just a simple, you've just got a target, one thing, you don't have these extra bits, then you can just include it just as this particular measure that's called that. And then you do if greater than, then green, if less than 0, then R, and then everything else amber. But what I've done as a clever little highlight, because if you remember here, this is a target that's performing green, but it's orange. And it's because there's a section here that is actually performing negatively. And therefore, I'm calling this out that this is an issue here. Instead of just going, yeah, it's green, you're above target compared to last year. Brilliant. You're not here. So there's a concern, and that's why it's made everything amber. And this is where this is different to most KPI cards you see, because I've seen it many, many times where people focus on just the large number and actually don't notice stuff that's happening at the bottom until things hit the fan. And I came up with this idea of being able to do it like this because it's a good way of being able to focus on those key areas that businesses use. So for this to work and give you that particular color scheme, both new and repeat customers. So all I've done is go switch and then true, then comma, and then I've put in the new customer diff is greater than 0 and, which is where you have to put the 2 and signs, and then the same again if customer repeat, so it's that measure for the repeat, is greater than 0. So basically both of those have to be greater than 0, and if so, make it green, because if they're both greater than 0, that means they are both in the green. And then the same goes for the reverse. If it's red, it's exactly the same layout. It's just instead of using greater than, we're just doing less than, and then and there, and then it's red. Anything else, amber. The reason being is you don't want to keep writing multiple different ones for that. It just matters that if you've got one that's up and one that's down, you want to make it amber. So that's why you just do that as your final result, because if they're not both up, or they're not both down, then they're going to be amber. And that's why you get it showing up as amber here. So now you've seen how I did it. Now you've seen how it's created. I'm going to do now the title. So if we go up to the call out values again, make sure your series is set to ATV. And then we come down to labels. And then under here, you've got color. We want to click on the conditional formatting again, format style, rules, add in 3 rules. So we got it here. And now what you want to do is under here, you can start writing, I called it card condition, the card con, but you can see they only popped up here. We've got our 3 different ones. We got it here. So now we selected it. It's now made it again, the 3 here. Shouldn't have added the 3 before then. But yeah, now you can add in the 3. So there we go. So now it's set to what it needs to be. And then you can set what any colors you want to be your red, because all you've got it is text. So it knows it's text. And we've done red, amber, green, remember? And then all I've done is just use the standard colors that I've got set up here. I think the theme I'm using is City Park or something like that. Can't remember off the top of my head. But whatever ones you got and whatever ones you want to use as your red, amber, green, doesn't even have to be red, amber, green, whatever color scheme you want. I'm choosing the top ones here. So I'm doing red and then amber and then green. And then it's as simple as that. You got your rag status, so your red, amber, green. You set your card as your ATV one, do okay, boom. There you go. You now have a title that is conditional formatted. And just to prove that point, if we just play around, we can see it's less than. There you go, it's green. There we go. These ones are up and you can see they're up. And then if we go here, green again, and then that one is green again, but then these ones have got down on new, but they're up. And then here is an example where it's gone orange in July because repeat are up, but new are down. So that's why you have this going orange. Let's just go back for the whole year. And now we want to be able to do the outside to do exactly the same. So all we do is go back, click on the card, go back in, go to our card. Then we go to ATV as our series. And then we've got border. And then we can go into the conditional formatting under color, under border. And we just repeat the same thing. We just find it, just type in card, select it, 1, 2, 3, red, amber, and green. And then we do red, amber, and green, save. And now we've got the red line around the side, close border, go down to accent bar, which is this bar at the top. And now we want to go down to color, click on that, add in rules, select card. Go new rule, red, amber, and green. And now we've got red, amber, and green. And then we do okay. And now we have our format in there. And then that leaves us with one last thing. And if we go to reference labels, all, so we go reference labels, apply settings, all, divider. Down here, you've got color. We go here. Again, we go rules, search for card, new rule. Red, amber, green, red, amber, and green, and do okay. And now the whole thing is now formatted with the conditional formatting as red all around the sides. And this now leaves us with the remaining reference labels to get you this nice little call out with the background and everything. So what you do here is now you want to go back to select series under reference labels and do ATV again. Just so you got all your reference labels popped up here. And then down here, you got your select label. Now you can work backwards if you wanted to, but I'm just going to start from the top. I'm going to go for this one at the top here. So now we selected the target diff. Down here, we're not going to change the title color but we are going to change what the color is of the values, and then we're going to change what the detail is. So that's that bit there, that bit there. So for the value, you just open it up, and then we just go to font color, and then we go to rules. And then this time we can just add 3 because this is what we want. And for our actual measure, we want to use the actual target diff because we want to know if it's greater than or less than whatever that target diff is. So if we write in target diff, I forgot to take off caps, there we go, we can see here we have the one that we want, which is this one. Now annoyingly you can't extend this, and I've got really long titles so you can't really see it, but this is the one that I want. You see it cuts off there. Then what we want to be able to do is, because this is the font, so the main font that we want that to be kind of dark. So we want the first one to be red, and we're using about this red, but you can play around with it, see which one works, and then I'm adding the green there. So now we know we're going to have a color change that's quite dark, so it's not going to be too in your face, but it's going to be enough to be noticeable. And then because it's red, we want red to be less than 0, greater than min, so no change there. For amber, we want it to equal 0, and then for anything greater than 0, so we change that to greater than and then add a 0, we want to be green, but we get the error because at the moment it's less than 0, so if we take out the 0 we get max, and then there we get the means to be able to now remove that error and do OK. And as you can see, that just slightly changed to red. And now we can look at the detail. So if we come down to detail, under here you get 2 options. We got our font color, is the font color, and then the background, which is color. So that's what's creating this thing at the background. So let's do font color first, and we can do exactly the same as what we just did with the font color for the previous value, which all we're doing is now going to target diff again, and we want to have the darker ones, so dark red, dark amber, or orange, and dark green. And then we leave that as it is, do that as equals 0, greater than 0, and remove the 0, so we got max. And you can see now that's changed to red. And then for color, we go in rules again, 3 rules, and then we do target diff again, but this time instead of using the darker one, because if we did it would then make the font disappear, we want to use the lightest possible one. So we're going to do a light red, a light orange, amber, and a light green. And then we just do exactly the same. We just go in there, do 0, and then go greater than 0, and then take that off. Go. Nice. There you go. You have your conditional formatting set up for your target, and it's exactly the same that I'm going to do for new and repeat. So all you have to do is just scroll back up, find your select label, and then you just select new customer, and then we just start playing with the colors. So we just avoid title, we come to font color for value, we then go rules, new, come here, and now target diff will be new. So if we do a hyphen then new, you start typing it in, and then we know we're using the right one here, and you can see it says new there. Then we use the dark red, dark orange, dark green, and do equals 0, greater than 0, and max. There we go, updated. And then if we come down to detail, do the same again, rules, target diff, new. I'm just going to copy that so I can use that next time. And then we do that, add 2, change the color, red, amber, green, equals 0, greater than 0, and max. And there we go. Then color, go to rules, hide, because I've now copy and paste, now get it automatically pop up. And then because we want the lighter ones, we just go in there to the lighter ones again, equals 0, greater than, and then blank. And then now we've done that one, go back up, select label, repeat customer, come down to values, font color, and then rules, add 3. I'm going to type this in, and I'm going to type R instead of the N, so we get repeat. Again, copy that, do that, and then we want to do the dark ones, so dark red, dark orange, dark green, equals 0, 0. And then down to detail, font color. It's all very mundane, isn't it? But once it's done, works a treat. There we go, up to the last bit now. Color, rules, that one, add 2 in, and we're almost there. Greater than 0, less than, okay, boom, there we go. We now have our final KPI card done. And as you can see, this is now giving you the red all across the board. So now if we changed them, so let's go December, we can see that's not performing well. November again, but October was great across the board. September, sales is up because ATV is up, but orders are basically on point for new. So it's the same, but because there's been more ATV across the board, look at that, a lot, but it's the same amount of new customers. It just meant the new customers in September this year compared to last year, in 2017 compared to 2016, they spent a lot more. So that's why ATV's up, but orders were down. And if we go August, we can see ATV is actually up, new is down, and it looks like it's just one person. So that amount of sale caused a difference, even though that's slightly up. So you're probably looking about $700-800 or something like that would be a difference, because it's one order, and then this is an ATV, which is the average. That's where it's going there. And then we can just keep going through the different ones. We can see another one here. June's not great. May is not great across the board. April, repeat was up, but the overall ATV was down. That means that even though you have more orders, the actual sales value was down compared to the previous year. And the same, new, down. The ATV, generally it looks like ATV across the board in 2017 was down compared to 2016. As we know here, it definitely shows you that. But across most months, we can see there's nothing there that's sort of picking up too much. The majority seems to be that the average transaction value was that people were spending less. Even though you had more money and more sales overall, they're actually spending less. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please give a like and subscribe. And if you want to learn more tricks and tips on Power BI, check out these videos over here where I show you how. And as always, until next time.